Hello there, I'm That Other George. And Star Wars. It's an interesting franchise. From 2015 to 2019, Disney released 5 Star Wars films. The Last Jedi in particular completely divided the fanbase, making many question how much they really liked The Force Awakens. And the latter two did not receive overwhelming praise. But through all this, Rogue One appeared to be the only one that had survived, which is very interesting. But by 2019, Disney had put any potential films on the back burner, and instead focused their efforts with TV shows. These series ranged from hollow, embarrassing, and contradictive. However, there was a series on the horizon, a prequel about the supporting character in Rogue One. Okay. I don't really know who wants this, but it's worth a shot. Andor, I guess you're my only hope. Oh, okay. Wow, that was actually awesome. Guess we may as well break down why. There are many different components to Andor, but this first season is split into 4 main arcs. We have the recruitment arc, the Aldhani heist arc, the prison arc, and the finale where all these different plot lines meet. The first arc of Andor showed viewers that after such a long time we would finally be getting a grounded and mature story within the Star Wars universe. When Cassian is searching for his sister on Milana 1, he gets on the wrong side of 2 Corpo security officers, and when he's cornered he proceeds to kill both of them. In most pieces of media, the deaths of 2 insignificant characters would be very quickly brushed over, but in Andor, this event kickstarts the story and has a huge ripple effect on how everything plays out. Because following this, we are introduced to one of my favourite characters, Cyril Khan. He is extremely passionate about his job, unlike most of his colleagues, and when he hears about 2 fellow officers being killed, he puts his all into trying to track down the person who committed this injustice. I love this aspect of the story. Although Cyril has some strict methods and is operating under the bad side, I would overall call him a good person trying to do the right thing. We are finally seeing the nuances of the good and bad sides in this universe. This is not an aspect I expect any of the films to explore, as a decent amount of screen time is needed for this. However, these TV shows should theoretically be the perfect opportunity to do just that. We saw a glimpse of this aspect in The Mandalorian, as the stormtroopers are happy to see who they believe to be fellow troopers have survived, showing us that they are immensely supportive and look out for each other.
Never thought you'd be happy to see stormtroopers.
In Obi-Wan Kenobi, we saw an individual who is pro-Empire, and doesn't see anything wrong with a little bit of order in the galaxy.
Nothing wrong with a little order, right?
And in Ahsoka, there's a brief moment where it's stated that a lot of workers are neither pro-Republic or Empire, and will simply work for whoever can provide them a job. This is then thrown out the window when someone cartoonishly screams. All 3 of these examples are very interesting aspects within their respective shows. But unfortunately, all 3 of these examples are very quickly moved past and do not continue on to the greater narrative. The reason this is such an important component in the Star Wars universe and is worthy of exploration is because every character is going to have some form of motivation for why they do what they do. You'll have characters motivated by money, characters that are motivated because of the loss of people close to them, or characters who believe in the greater good. However, there is no reason why these motivations would be exclusive to one side or the other. Boba Fett, for example... Wait, sorry, I'm not sure what he's doing on screen. I prefer the real Boba Fett. I said the real Boba Fett.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Perfection. Anyway, he wasn't necessarily pro-Empire. He was only involved with the bad guys to hand Han Solo over to Jabba and receive his paycheck. We then have a character like Luthen who is a driving force for the rebellion, and yet when those working for him want out, he doesn't allow it. Ironic how the rebellion fights for others' freedom, and yet people on their own side become trapped. Luthen believes in the greater good but will do whatever it takes to get there. Boba Fett, before things got complicated and then really contradictive, seemed to only be bothered by bounty hunting and the money he received for doing so. Whether he was hunting down a good or bad guy didn't seem to really faze him. The best pieces of media will understand that morality exists on a spectrum, and will present where it's often a lot more complicated than a character simply being good or evil, no matter which side they're on. But for this to be effective, there needs to be importance and/or depth to the story. So despite being in favour of the Preox Milana and the Empire, Cyril is not doing a bad thing here, and why he believes what he is doing is right is thoroughly explored through numerous character interactions and the way he tries to motivate his co-workers. It's also nice that we have competent antagonists back in Star Wars media, as Cyril makes a lot of correct judgments and decisions, which leads to a fellow man from Ferrix sending a report on Cassian, and Cyril also has a witness who saw him on Milana 1. With all these pieces in place, Cyril and Linus, another passionate worker under the Preox Milana, assemble a team to go to Ferrix and arrest Cassian. Fortunately for Cass, Luthen, who he was going to sell an NS9 Starpath unit to, instead turns out to be a lot more invested in working with him. Up to this point in the story, Cass has simply been hustling for himself. He hates the Empire for killing his adopted father, Clem Andor. He will happily steal from the Empire but accepts that they're unlikely to go away anytime soon. But whilst being cornered as the Blues close in on him, he decides to escape Ferrix alongside Luthen, the two of them making very tactical decisions and killing a bunch of corpos in the process, leaving Cyril absolutely devastated. In the second arc, Cassian has been offered an opportunity to make a lot of money and hurt the Empire by joining up with a small rebel team on Aldhani with a plan to steal a quarterly payroll for an entire Imperial sector. Whilst he settles in, we see the aftermath of everything that went down with Ferrix now being under Imperial authority. All of a sudden, the Empire getting involved in something feels incredibly significant. The presence of a few Imperial officers and soldiers roaming the streets now seems like a huge deal. Now, I've often spotted defences for previous Disney Star Wars content stating that the Empire has always been incompetent, so therefore it's okay when it's present in these recent movies or shows. And in response to that, I feel people need reminding of the Empire's skill in A New Hope. In the opening scene, we see a Star Destroyer going after a rebel blockade runner. By the scale of the ships alone, the Empire is already seen as a much more imposing threat. Once the stormtroopers board the ship, they are able to wipe out most of the rebels with ease, this time without the need for Darth Vader to even be involved. There are very few stormtrooper casualties compared to the deaths of rebels. The remaining rebels are held as prisoners alongside Princess Leia, and this kickstarts the plot of the entire film. All of this is due to the Empire and their competency, establishing them as a threat in the opening of the film and making them a challenge for our heroes to defeat. This scene results in huge consequences, establishes the stakes, and makes that final act feel like an immense accomplishment. Compare the competency from the Empire in A New Hope to Obi-Wan Kenobi, where stormtroopers can't even handle a slap to the face, and somehow dozens of troopers don't realise the guy wearing a trench coat has 4 legs. Yeah, to say that stormtroopers have been embarrassing in Star Wars over the past few years would be an understatement. Thankfully, Andor returns to the traditional roots of this franchise, with the bad guys being competent and a threat to our heroes. And a team of 7 going up against an Imperial garrison of 40 men is something that has required so much prep work and skill in order for the heist to be successful and for the team to obtain all those credits. Even then, the plan didn't play out as smoothly as the team were hoping, resulting in 2 men being killed in the crossfire. The rest of the team managed to narrowly escape, but Nemik is crushed during the takeoff and passes away later as a result. This heist has resulted in quite devastating consequences, but they are still not in the clear yet. A simple 3 TIE fighters are deployed from Alkensi Air Command. The threat of the Empire in this show, combined with the consequences that have already happened, makes the following scene a very stressful one to sit through. The team use the Eye as a cover to escape as the meteors wipe out the TIE fighters. Despite the casualties of 3 men, Aldhani is viewed as a win for the rebels and a loss for the Empire. But to add further nuances to the good versus evil in this show, It turns out that one of the team members, Skeen, isn't quite who he said he was. He proposes to Cassian that they should take the credits for themselves and split it 50-50. His idea being that the two aren't so different. After hearing this proposal, Cassian quickly shoots him. After all the trouble they've been through, he is disgusted to hear this offer. Cass takes the cut he was promised for assisting with the heist and leaves the leader Vel with the rest. After the Aldani heist, Cassian tries to lay low for a little while on the planet Neomos. But where you try to hide in the galaxy does not really matter anymore, as the Empire is spread out everywhere. And his avoidance of them turns out to be the very thing that gets him caught. Ironic. He is sentenced to prison for 6 years and will be working on Narkina 5, putting together important components for a gigantic project that the Empire is working on. After 30 shifts, it would seem that Cassian is used to working in this environment and is just as efficient as the rest of his teammates. But not too long after, word starts travelling around the facility that something is not quite right on level 2. And later it's confirmed to both Cassian and his floor manager Kino Loy that all the men on level 2 were fried. Kino is yet another superb character in this show, and up to this point he has been a great leader. He accepts the situation he's in, ensures that everyone gets along, and convinces himself that there is light at the end of the tunnel. However, that attitude changes once he understands the reason why level 2 got fried was because a man from level 4 was supposed to be released, but instead got put on 2. The idea here is to transfer these inmates to other prisons once their supposed sentence is up. However, in this case they made a fatal error, and went into full damage control when word began to spread. Even though this is building towards something big, these are still fairly low stakes in the grand schemes of the Star Wars universe, especially considering that all of these men are seen as expendable to the Empire. But that is the exact reason why Kino's change of attitude, Cassian's well thought out plan, and the team spirit behind all 5,000 men is so powerful. These are normal, everyday, hard-working people that have lost their freedom. Now a couple of inmates rebelling will do nothing. The guards have ways of dealing with them. Rebels alone are weak, but rebels together are strong, and if motivated can easily escape. So Unit 52D, although with casualties, managed to escape, and now Cassian and Kino are in control of the command center. Following an empowering speech from Kino, so many men are able to escape the facility, and seeing those tiny little bodies swim out from such a huge building makes this an incredible accomplishment. The use of scale in this show puts all the threats in the galaxy into perspective. Starting each arc with fairly low stakes has made both those threats and payoffs a lot more engaging. It's why one Star Destroyer showing up on Aldani feels so powerful, and why thousands of Star Destroyers buried beneath the surface in The Rise of Skywalker feels utterly nonsensical. Bigger doesn't necessarily mean better. That's why I try telling myself anyway. Setting the stakes too high in your story can often, ironically, bring down the tension. This unfortunately has been a common mistake in a lot of the recent Star Wars media. I found Obi-Wan Kenobi specifically to be quite frustrating because the large scale of that show feels very forced. Episode 1 was the better episode of that series because it begins with Obi-Wan simply working and going about his life. And if the series were to remain consistent and be both a good sequel to Revenge of the Sith and prequel to A New Hope, then the rest of the episodes should have continued this. We saw in Andor that the Empire is infecting every corner of the galaxy, and that same level of conflict that Cassian faces could have been the crux of Kenobi, forcing him into situations where he needs to avoid stormtroopers on a small scale. But because it has the Star Wars label, it needs to have lightsaber duels and hundreds of stormtroopers. Andor proves that starting out small and slowly scaling up results in a far more satisfying story. Arc 4, the finale, is where all of these main plotlines meet. After Cassian escapes the prison and gets back to Neomos, he phones an associate of his on Ferrix, but unfortunately is informed of his mother's passing. After hearing the tragic news, he looks out to sea at the sunset, reflecting the finale of Rogue One. We already know what's going to happen to this character, but witnessing the full journey, understanding why he believes the things he does, and seeing him become an unstoppable force for good has been so emotionally satisfying. But with that news, Cass will be returning to Ferrix, and he will not be the only one. Ferrix is still under Imperial control, and Dedra from the ISB will be there, in attempt to capture Cassian. Cyril and Linus will be going as this case is very close to them, and could be a good opportunity to clear their names. And finally, Vel, Cinta and Luthen will be there in attempts to kill Cassian, as he knows too much about their operation and is seen as a liability. Just a quick reminder that none of this would be possible if Cassian hadn't killed those two corpos. This is a superb use of cause and effect and demonstrates clear consequences in the story. For the funeral, B2 has a saved recording of a speech from Marva. Much like the other monologues in this series, this one is simply brilliant.
My name is Marva Carassi Andor. I'm honored to be a daughter of Ferrix, and honored to be worthy of the stone.
My name is Kilo Loy. I'm the day shift manager on level 5.
And what do you sacrifice?
Kindness, kinship, love.
How long we hang on, how far we get, how many of us make it out, all of that is now up to us.
I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do.
And now I'm dead. And I yearn to lift you.
We will never have a better chance than this.
My eagerness to fight has set me on a path from which there's no escape.
And I would rather die trying to take them down than giving them what they want.
I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see.
Not because I want to shine, or even be remembered. It's because I want you to go on.
Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude.
We know that they are making up our sentences as we go along.
There is a darkness reaching like rust into everything around us. We let it grow, and now it's here.
And now we know that when they say we are being released, we are being transferred to some other prison to go and die.
So what do I sacrifice? Everything!
The Empire is a disease that thrives in darkness.
And that ends today. There is one way out.
Perhaps it's too late.
Right now. The building is ours.
If I could do it again, I'd wake up early and be fighting these bastards.
If we can fight half as hard as we've been working, we will be home in no time.
Fight the Empire!
What I especially like during Marva's speech are the expressions on Luthen's face.
There is a wound that won't heal at the center of the galaxy. The Empire is a disease that thrives in darkness.
And how even afterwards he still struggles to process it all. He's mostly been operating behind the scenes and talking to extremely powerful figures. He never got a true sense of how the good, everyday people in the galaxy felt towards the Empire. The episode ends with Cassian saving those close to him and sending them to a place where they're out of harm's way. He then waits on Luthen's ship and confronts him once he's aboard. knowing full well that he came to Ferrix to kill him. Cassian gives him a choice to shoot him down or take him in, showing that despite years of trying to ignore the Empire, he is now fully committed to fighting with the rebellion. Season 1 of Andor is a great season of television, and something I love about it is how it feels like several different miniseries in one. These different arcs present us with settings that were previously absent in the Star Wars universe. The gritty parts of Ferrix, the beautiful, mostly natural planet of Aldhani, and the seemingly never-ending labyrinth of Narkina 5. With these locations in mind, the show clearly has a very different feel to it, and as a result I've spotted a few criticisms claiming that Andor is not true Star Wars. This is also due to the lack of superficial elements in the show, such as there never being a single lightsaber ignited. Now if one wants to define Star Wars with its memorabilia and imagery, then that's fair enough. However, I would strongly argue that's the exact reason why a lot of content from this franchise in the last few years has felt extremely safe and watered down, relying too much on the past, not adding anything new, and often contradicting the original media. Andor had something new to bring to the table. It has the same paint job as Star Wars, but offers different stories and various character perspectives from both the Rebellion and the Empire, in ways that we've never seen before, whilst also incorporating some inspiration from other mature science fiction properties like Blade Runner. The end result is something very different, but something that absolutely broadens our understanding and very much has its place in the Star Wars universe. In conclusion, Andor is a very well written show, with clear stakes, a great use of cause and effect, thorough explorations of characters and why they believe the things they do, a more nuanced look into the Empire and the Rebellion, and an effective pacing building up to the action, making those payoffs very satisfying. The world building of Andor is also superb, and really goes out of its way to create a galaxy that is believable. A problem with Star Wars in general is that we often get introduced to characters whose only purpose is to move along the plot. Attack of the Clones very much contains an example of this. After a very, convoluted attempt to assassinate Padme, Kenobi and Anakin manage to catch the assassin, who is then killed by Jango Fett with a Kamino saber dart. But thankfully, Obi-Wan happens to know someone called Dexter Jettster who owns a 50s diner who happens to have knowledge over Kamino saber darts. He is a very amusing and memorable character, but his only purpose is to shift Obi-Wan over to Kamino. Andor, on the other hand, goes to huge lengths to strengthen that world building. I completely buy that Luthen has a contact on an industrial planet who is close to someone who can obtain important Imperial components. Having these connections may help the Rebellion, but it also gives the Empire a better chance of tracking down those who are responsible for going against them, hence why Cassian was seen as a liability. It is both a believable and interesting way of showing how all these characters connect to one another, and if one goes down, they all go down. This does wonders for Andor's world building by presenting us with the enormous scope of the galaxy, but also all the tight-knit communities that exist within it. Overall, this series has consistent, quality writing that elevates far beyond the rest of modern Star Wars media. However, the show is not only well written, but essentially every element of production is excellent as well. The use of practical sets makes you feel so immersed in these episodes, and a great amount of thought has gone into each location, from the industrial feel of Ferrix to the pristine white clean feel of Mon Mothma's home or the ISB headquarters. The shot composition further adds to this stunning presentation, with a lot of shots having the perfect alignment of everything in the frame, pretty much what Star Wars would look like if it was directed by Stanley Kubrick. This might be a hot take, but I think the music from Nicholas Britell is the best in the franchise. It is quite the varied OST. My personal favourites are the awesome soundtrack Pilgrim, the intense Taurus Don't Run, the insanely catchy Neo-Mos Galaxy mix, and the incredibly uplifting Past Present suite, all very appropriate to the atmosphere and tone of the scene. The performances from all cast members were terrific, with a whole range of emotion. I really bought into these characters, and that further added to the maturity of the story. It can be easy to get caught up in the doom and gloom of modern Star Wars, But this series, led by Tony Gilroy, proves that with the right ideas and with so much passion, you can create brilliant stories in this universe, making us all feel a little bit more optimistic about the future. I've been your host, That Other George, and thank you for watching.